In this video, we're going to cover everything you could want to know about Flexbox. And we have more tutorials and courses on HTML, CSS, CSS Grid, Bootstrap, Material UI, and more on this channel and on our website. There's also a course project where we use Flexbox to build an entire web page, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and check out the links in the description for more details. There should also be a link to course files because this video is split into 5 different sections, each with a starting code project and an ending code project. So you can either start and follow along, or you can just get the final version of that section. So check out the course files in the description. In the Flexbox folder, there should be a one start. So we can go ahead and open up that, and that will be our starting point. And then I'm going to pull it down here, and then we have our index.html file, and it's basically just an empty body. So let's go ahead and say hi, save, and then put it in our browser. So I'm going to drag this into our window, hit enter, and then we have our starter code. So I'm going to full screen this, and then we're going to start working on some Flexbox. So the first thing I want to do is create a few divs inside the body. I'm going to say div class equals, and I'm going to call it flex-container. And that doesn't make it a Flexbox yet, it just makes it have this class name. And then inside of this div, I'm going to make a few divs. So div class equals item-1. And then I'm just going to say I am a div block. Okay, and then I'm going to copy and paste, and we're going to make 4. So 4, 3, 2, 1. So each of these have their own class names, and then we'll hit save. And then if I refresh, we can see I am a div block all the way down. So there's nothing special so far. And then I want to add some background colors. So I'm going to say the flex-container can have a background color of aqua. And then the item-1 can have a background color of yellow. I'm going to copy these. I think I had 4. So item 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll say item 2 has a background of gold. Item 3, we can do yellow, green. And then item 4, I just like to have different colors to make it easier to see what's going on. So there we go, and then here we go. So nothing special yet still, just 4 blocks upside on top of each other. And then the fancy thing that's going to happen is when we change the display type to flex. So here's our flex container, or the container that's supposed to be flex. And so let's change this class flex container from a block to a flex. So if we go here, we can see flex container. And if we right click and inspect, and we click on the flex-container, we can see that it still has a display of block. So let's try to change the display type to flex. So you can do that 2 ways. We can go here in the dev tools and type display flex, and then we can see, whoa, what happened? So now all of these blocks are side by side with each other. If you refresh or resets, but let's change this here to flex in flex container as well. So display flex, save, and then if I refresh, now we have all of these div blocks are side by side with each other. And so this is what happens when you turn a container into a flex container or a flex display type. And these now become flex items, and they are all side by side with each other. So there's a few things that we can do. The first thing I'd like to show you is the centering and like moving it around. So there's a couple different display options for a Flex container. So we can say justify hyphen content, which is the content inside of the Flex container. So here in our index, these are all, or in our index.html file, all of these divs are Flex items. That's why I call it, that's why I made the class item, but they're still items regardless of what you name the class. So these are the Flex items inside of the Flex container. And so you can space and align the items in the container with justify hyphen content. So there's a couple options. There's flex hyphen end. Let's hit save, refresh, and now all of the elements or the items have moved to the end of the Flex container. We can do center, save, and now they are centered. We can do space around, save, refresh, and now there's a space around each element. And there's also space evenly and a space between. So there's a variety of different options. So let me go ahead and get rid of this flex here. We refresh and we're back here. And then the other option is, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste a bunch of all of these different options so you can have them for reference in the future. Save. Okay, so they're back in the center. But anyway, the next step is I want to look at I'm going to change this div block into an unordered list. So in the index.html, we can add some stuff into this item -4. So what I want to do is I want to make it an unordered list. So I'm just going to say ul class equals flex-ul. And then I'm going to make a bunch of list items. So list item. And then I'm going to paste. So there's 4 list items. Save. And then we refresh. And now we can see some weird stuff's happening. This is no longer a like side-by-side items because the UL is a display type of block. So if we click on item 4 and we expand it and we see the UL with a class of flex UL, the UL still has a display type of block. If we wanted this to be side by side, like these items are, we would have to make the UL a flex container as well. So we can do that by just saying display flex. And now they are side by side. So if you want to, and then if you want to get rid of these dots, you can do this list-style-type as none if you want to do that. So let's go ahead and add that into our code. So I'm going to go back to the code, style.css, and I called it flexul. So let's add that into our CSS. I'm going to say .flex-ul display flex and list-style-type none. Save. And then now if we refresh, nothing happens because we have the same styles as we had just set up. But now let's try to center the flex items. So like right now we have this content all centered in the container. Well, let's try to center this one. You might think, okay, well, we can do flexul and center these list items. So let's give it a try. So display flex, and up here we did justify content center. So let's try it. Justify content center, save, refresh, and nothing is happening. So what's going on? Well, if you look, if you click on this UL, we can see that little space there, that little green stuff. If we look here, there's a padding of 40. So maybe it is being centered, I don't know. Let's try to get rid of it. So I'm going to enter 0. Okay, well now it just makes it smaller. So I think it solved part of the problem, but it didn't actually solve the issue. So I'm going to refresh, and the problem is that this div class item still has a display of block. So what we need to actually do is center the UL in the item. So let's give that a try. Let's turn item 4 into a flex container. So style.css, item 4, we can say display flex. Let's save it, refresh. Okay, it still didn't work because we have to justify the content to the center. Save, refresh. Okay, and it's still not working because we have that padding in there still. So let's get rid of the padding in the Flex UL. Padding : 0 pixels. Save, refresh. And so now it might be centered, but we don't have enough width. So let's go ahead and try to make this item 4 bigger. And so we can do that by saying item 4 has a width of, I don't know, 550 pixels. Save, refresh, and then now we have a centered UL in our container. And so you're going to go ahead and open up the to start folder and drag it into the window or the browser window. I'm going to be doing to finished. So I'm going to open up this one. Okay, and then I'm going to grab the index.html file and drag it into here. Hit enter, and then we have the previous video's code that we started with, or that we ended with. So what I want to show you is right here we've got these 3 blocks, these 3 blocks of text, and they're all shoved up at the top. And also the item, this color here stretches. So because of this item over here, this entirely separate block, it affects all of these 3. So if we add padding to that list item, or actually let's make it not flex anymore. So if I go to Flex UL and I comment out the display flex and I think that's all I need to do, but let's get rid of the flex on the item 4 as well. So if I save that and this goes back to here, you can see maybe you don't want these blocks here to be stretched like this. So there's a couple options here, and so that's what we're going to talk about. So the first thing is I want to, well, maybe add a few more of these. So we'll do that, and then I think that might be all we need to do here in the index. So let's go to the style, and we have a few options with our flex container. So justify content is what helps us with the left and right axis, or the horizontal axis. So, with the centered, it centered it here horizontally, and then flex end pushed it all the way over here. Flex start was all the way at the beginning, but that was all the horizontal axis. What about the vertical axis? And so the way that we can do the vertical axis is with the align items. So instead of justify content, we can do align-items, and this will align the items within the container. And so we have a couple options here. And Another thing I'd like to point out is that there's some really good documentation and resources. So there's two that if you just type in Flexbox, we can see CSS-Tricks has a very good guide on Flexbox, and you can check that out. And then there's also the developer.mozilla concepts. And so this is like more official, but it's a little bit more convoluted because it's like the actual documentation. So anyway, you can definitely check these out. They're very, very helpful. So anyway, let's go ahead and look at these. So align items has a couple of different options: flex start, end, and then center, stretch, and baseline. And so by default, we're at stretch. So let's try center. So align items as center, save, and then refresh. And now we can see that the color does not get stretched anymore, and these items here are right here in the center. So if that's what you want, if that's closer to what you're looking for, then you can just use align item center. You can also use, I'm going to comment this, copy and paste, and then uncomment. And so we have align items, and then we can do flex end, save, refresh, and now it's at the bottom. So, and then there's also baseline, which is like where the text hovers over top of the center line. So that's another option. But yeah, basically align items is what we can use to do this. And then if you want to, what if you want the color here, but you want all of this text to be in the center? Well, then in this case, you would have to make each item or each flex item its own flex container. So let's comment this. We'll go back to, let's do align items stretch, which is, I believe it's the default. So here's what we had. So now we need to center these. How do we do that? We make these flex items. So let's give that a try. I'm going to first start with item 1. So this yellow one here, we'll say display flex, and then save, refresh. Nothing happens because, you know, we haven't set a display property. So let's try to make it centered. So we can say align items center, save, refresh, and then now it's in the center. So let's try to get this one down at the end. So item 2 is gold. So let's say display flex, and then align items flex hyphen end, save, refresh, and now it's all the way down here. So, and then this one we could do start, or you could do baseline, but hopefully this all makes sense. Let's just do flex start. It's not going to change anything, but that's fine. So we'll do display flex, and then align items flex hyphen start, save, refresh, and then it's still up here at the start. So that's pretty much align items. I'm going to open up the 3 finished. You can open up the 3 start. So I'm going to open it up in my text editor. And then I've already got it over here in a browser. And basically what we have is 9 flex items, each with a different color. And then the flex container has a pink background. So if we look at it, we got flex container, our 9 flex items with a class of flex item and a number. And then here in style, we have the flex item and then 9 different classes with different colors and the flex container. So if we save all that, we get this. And so you'll notice that all 9 flex items are neatly shoved over to the left side of the container. And what happens if we want the flex items to have a certain width, say 25% width? We can go ahead and save it, refresh, and we see that it now takes up the entire width of the container, but they're definitely less than 25% because at max you can only have 4 without having a scrolling effect. But 25, 50, 75, 100, that's as far as we should be able to get, and that should take up all the space. So how are Flex 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 showing up without wrapping? And that's because the Flex container will overwrite the width, because by default the Flex container tries to keep everything in one row. And that is because of the no wrap option. So if we look at our CSS here in the Flex container, there's no Flex wrap setting. So if we wanted them to all be 25%, then we would have to set up a wrap if it's going to overflow. So I'm not sure if overflow is the correct terminology for that, but we want to make sure that because it's not all going to fit, then we have to do something with it. So one option here is wrap. So flex-wrap, and then we can say wrap, and then save, refresh, and now we get 1, 2, 3, 4 max on each row. And so this properly wraps to the next line. And then we can also, I'm going to give this each flex item a little padding. So padding 25 pixels, save. Okay, I think that looks a little better. So they're wrapping 1, 2, 3, and let's just give it up and down wrapping then. So 25 pixels and 0 pixels, save. Okay, there we go. So flex 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it wraps to the next line. The other option is you can wrap the other way. So there's a wrap -reverse. I'm going to copy and paste. Wrap -reverse, save. And now we've got 9 up at the top and then 1 here at the bottom. And so this is kind of weird. I don't use this hardly ever, but yeah, so it starts at flex 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it wraps the other direction. So if you ever need that, that is available. And then let's go ahead and go back to regular wrap. So I'm going to comment that out and uncomment the regular wrap. So we'll save that. And anyway, now we have items wrapping to the next line when it overflows off the page. So the other thing is that I wanted to talk about is the direction. So let's go ahead and I'm going to comment out this flex item here because I don't want it to be confusing. Okay, so we have these. We're back to just them all getting shoved up here, but you can change the direction of the layout as well. And so you can do that with flex direction. So flex-direction, and we'll say column. Save, refresh, and now we can see that it's almost like the div container has been flipped sideways. So now they wrap down. And so if we wanted them to wrap like one up here, 2 down here, 3 here, 4 here, and then 5 over here, then we would do something like with the column direction. And then now let's go ahead and say the flex item is 25% wide and a padding of 25 pixels. Save, refresh, and so now we've got this. And now if you want it to wrap, then you're going to need to force the height, because by default this container is just going to keep going down. So we need to set it at max height so it doesn't go any higher or up and down's length any more than a specified amount. So what we can do is we can say the flex container's height is 300 pixels. We can do that with height, 300 pixels. Save, and then now this pink area is going to be no more than 300 pixels high. So we save it, and now Flex 1, 2, 3, and 4 can go all the way down, but there's no more space because we've, right here is, 301 pixels, so it has to wrap to the next line. And so now we're wrapping this direction. And once again, you can wrap reverse as well. Save, and there we go. And so I think that was actually everything that I had to cover in this video. Let's go back to column and regular direction wrap. But anyway, that is it for directional wrapping and flex wrapping. In this section, we're going to cover flex grow, flex basis, and flex shrink, and we are going to be in the for start folder. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this entire folder for start, and then I'm going to drag and drop both index and index-basis into the browser. So hit enter, and then index basis as well. Enter. Okay, cool. So I have two index files this time, index and index basis. And so we have over here index and index basis. So we're going to start with the index.html file. And let's just take a look. I'm in the for finished folder, so you can open up the for start and then follow along. And anyway, we have this index.html, which just has a flex container with 3 div classes inside of it. So item 1, 2, and 3. And then in our style.css, we have the flex container and the 3 divs with different backgrounds. So, and it's already set up to a display of flex. So what we can do is, if we look at the code now, it just shows all 3 items snugly on the left. And if we give them a flex grow property, then it will take up the whole space by the amount of units that you give it. So for example, and you can think of it as like 1 part this, 1 part that, 2 parts this. So if we did something like the class of 1 to have flex-grow and a 1, then you would give 1 part to this one. Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Refresh. And so all of the growth, all of the leftover space gets put into 1. And so that's what this flex grow is. But if you give another element a flex grow, then it's going to give that element a certain amount of parts of the leftover space as well. So if I say container 2 has flex-grow 4, then then 2 is going to get 4 parts, and then the class of 1 is only going to get 1 part of the leftover space. So we'll save it, refresh, and now we get item 2 that gets, again, 4 parts, and then item 1 only gets 1 part of the extra space. And so part could be a different amount. It's just splitting it up evenly between these two. Or not evenly, but, for every 1 part this one gets 4 parts. So in the container 3, we'll give it a flex-grow of 2, save, refresh, and now we can see it's a little bit more even. But if you want it completely even, then you give each of them the same flex grow. And so another option that you can do is you can give a container a pre-existing width or something. So we can do something like width 50%, save, and so then item 1 is going to take up 50% of the space plus 1 part of the leftover space. So hopefully that makes sense. And let's see here. The next thing, we actually don't even really need to look at the index basis because we can just cover it here. So flex basis is basically the default amount of space before adding in the leftover parts. So if you wanted to do what we're doing here with the class of 1, I believe the more proper way would just be to do flex-basis 50%. And so let's see if that changes. Nope, it doesn't change anything. And so I believe that's the more proper way to do it, but essentially that's what flex basis is. So if you wanted to say, okay, I want class 1, 2, and 3 to each take up equal parts, but the class of 1 starts out with 432 pixels, we can save it, and then this one's going to start out with 432 pixels, and then it gets equal parts of the leftover space. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and back out there, just to kind of leave you with an example that has a variety of different things. So anyway, that is flex basis and flex grow. And then I also want to talk about order, which is real brief. So if we look here, we've got, it starts out in order. So item 1, item 2, item 3. And that's because we put item 1 at the top, item 2 below it, and then item 3 below that. So it's sequential. But with Flexbox, you can actually set up your own custom order. So if we wanted 1 to be the second item, we just say order 2. And then here in the class of 2, we could say order 3, and then 3 could be order 1, as an example. So order 1, we'll save, and so now it should be 3, 1, 2. Save, and we get 3, 1, 2. And they still have the same amount of spacing that they originally had, it's just that the ordering is different. And so that's order. And it feels weird to not cover shrink, so let's go ahead and just do that real quick. And shrink is basically the opposite of flex grow. And so the easiest way that I can think of how to set this up would be to just make 2 classes, shrink 1 with a width of 50%, and then dot shrink hyphen 2 with the width of 50%. And then we'll save that CSS. We'll go back to our index, and then let's make a new section. So div, and then we'll make, I'm gonna copy these, just 2 of these, paste them into here, and I'm gonna say shrink hyphen 1, shrink hyphen 2, save, and then I'm going to make some BRs, so some line breaks. So copy, paste, 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 just to give us some space to work with. And then now if we refresh, okay, we got item 1 and item 2 down here. Let's make, oh, you know what? We need to give this class equals, I don't know, shrink flex, I guess. Okay, shrink flex. So now let's make dot shrink hyphen flex display of flex. And then let's give this one a background color of pink and background color of orange. Save and then refresh. Okay, so we've got each one taking up 50% of the space. Let's say, you know what, actually let's make it 100%. So 100% and 100%. Save, refresh. Okay, and then I'm going to say flex hyphen shrink will be 1, and then flex hyphen shrink will be 4 on the orange. Save, and then refresh. And so now we can see that the orange one is shrinking to fit the flex layout. It's shrinking 4 times faster than the other one. So for every shrinkage that needs to happen, it will do it 4 times on orange for every 1 time that gets shrunken on the pink. So hopefully that makes sense. It's just the opposite of flex grow. In this video, we're going to look at the 5 start folder and the 5 finished folder, and I'm going to open the folder up and we're going to drag in the align self HTML file first. So I got that, and again, I'm using 5 finished. You should use a 5 start. And let's go ahead and take a look. Basically, all we have here is 4 items. This is very similar to what we had in the beginning, where the original or the other items are stretching to fit the largest item. And so we have like this UL here. And so align self allows you to break the default pattern for the items. So for example, if we go to our align self.css and then we look at the display, we can say align items flex-end. Save. And there's nothing new here. That's just, moving these items down here, or you could do flex start or center. And so this is going to apply to all of these items. So what if you need one of the items to break out of this pattern? That's where align self comes in. So we can go here and we can just say, okay, let's find the item that we want to break that pattern. So let's say 2. We can say align-self : center, save, refresh, and then now this item gets broken out of that pattern. And that's pretty much align self. So the next one I want to cover is, let's say, align content. So I'm going to shrink that down, drag align-content into the text editor, hit enter. Let's go ahead and close out align self files. Okay, so align content and align content.css. With this, we have 8 items. One of them is a UL, and so it makes the whole thing bigger. And so align content and align items are slightly different. So align content is about the rows, and then align items is about the items in the rows. And so hopefully it'll make more sense when we actually start looking at it. So let's go ahead and go to our align content.css and let's start filling it out. What I'm going to do first is make the height 800 pixels for the flex container. So height 800 pixels, save, and that's going to stretch all of these out to be 800 pixels, which is a little bit obnoxious. So let's see what happens. Let's see if we can break these out into separate rows. So I want the width of each item to be 33%. And so basically, in order to have multiple rows, we need to allow wrapping. So we can do flex-wrap, and this is nothing new yet. So we'll just hit save, refresh, and now we have width. Each item has a width of 33%. And so you can see this one is significantly bigger than these 2 items here because of this unordered list here. So right now they're stretching. So you can see it takes up all 800 pixels, but that's not necessarily what we want to do. What if you want it to have all of the rows down at the bottom? Then you can do align content flex end. And so if we go and refresh, then we have them down here now. Or you could do flex start and have them up at the beginning, or space around. So align content is where you're able to space out the rows of content in a flex container. So this flex container has extra space. So how do we space out the content between the space in the entire container? So let's try space around, save, and we can see here how that works. And so you might be confused about align content and align items then. So align items are the items within the rows. So notice here how we still have this UL here that's causing these two items to space out like this. Well, we can still use align self and align items in here. So let's say I want these to go down by default. So I can do align items and then flex-end, save, and now we're able to organize the items within the rows. And so then once more time, let's see, item 6, let's say I want this to by default go to the start. So I can do align self with that. So align -self, flex start, save, refresh, and there we go. So hopefully that makes sense. Align content is all of these, and then the align items is the items within the rows. So the next thing I want to do is look at the gap file. So let's open up a new tab, and then I'm going to shrink this down and then grab the gap.html and drag it in, enter. And so now we have 8 rows again, and I'm going to full screen it and then full screen the text editor. We'll close out of the align content files and then open up gap.css and gap.html. Okay, so in the gap file, what I want to do is have a display of flex, align items, flex start, and then I want to give it a height of 800 pixels again. So 800 pixels, save, refresh, and I'd like to allow wrapping. That way we can see the multiple columns and rows. So I'm going to say flex wrap, and then I'm going to give the width already has 450 pixels, so that should allow us to have multiple rows that we can look at. Okay, so we've got 4 rows, and then what I'd like to do is add some like spacing in between these columns here. And so actually I kind of want to get rid of the align items. So I'll save that. Or you know what, actually we can do flex start. Oh, you know what, I want to align content. Flex start. Save. Okay, so here's what I want. I want align content, flex start, and then I want to see how do we give it a little bit of space. Like maybe we want 20 pixels of space between these rows and 20 pixels of space between these columns. Well, we can do that simply by saying row-gap 20 pixels, and that'll give us 20 pixels of space between the rows. And then the columns would be column gap. Column gap, let's say 50 pixels. Save, refresh, and we can see here we've got 50 pixels of space. But you also notice that the gap can cause the rows to be split into, or to have less columns per row. So if we had a 0 gap of column and we had the width of 25%, then we would have 4 per row. But as soon as you add gaps, column gap, it's going to affect your ability to put the 4 items in each row, if that makes sense. So you'd have to calculate the gap into consideration when you determining how much gap space and how many items in a single row you want. So, but this is This is row gap and column gap. Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to be notified when we release new tutorials. Also be sure to like the video and leave a comment to let us know what you think. Lastly, check out the link or links in the description. We usually create a blog post to go with the tutorial, and we might have a newsletter or course or something to check out as well. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.